everyone here is taking a stand for something. They're taking a stand for their own wellness and finally prioritizing that. They're taking a stand for the future of their profession and creating a career that inspires them. They're taking a stand for nursing or for healthcare, the individual values, and we get to support each other on our own journey as well as the collective one.
Welcome back, nurses and nurse coaches, to the Nurse Coach Collective podcast, where today we are talking about the power of a collective.
Yes, we love talking about this because we live and breathe this. And this week, these past couple of days, we are celebrating something super exciting and special, which is the 250 plus nurses who are just jumping in. They are currently in week 2 of their nurse coaching journey. And so what that means is that our week is jam-packed full of video conferences, their very first time coming together live with us and with their peers and experiencing exactly that, the power of a collective.
Yes. So to all of our future nurse coaches who are joining us this week and starting off your learning journey, right? Welcome. We're so grateful that you're trusting us with your personal and professional development. And as we were having the calls this week, we really heard this sentiment come up over and over again about, wow, I feel home. I feel like I have found my people in nursing. I found a like-minded community to be a part of. And so that really brought up the idea to talk about the power of a collective.
Yeah, over and over again, some version of that sentiment being echoed. And we're only in the second week of the course. And what we know is that that's something that we continue to hear all throughout these nurses' journey through the program. And for us, it's something that we continue to feel every single day. It sometimes feels like we live in this magical world where we get to always be surrounded by nurse coaches and incredible, inspiring human beings on our team at the Nurse Coach Collective with our students, right? We live and breathe this community of nurse coaches. This collective is like our life. But we forget sometimes that for the nurses who are just entering into this field, this is their very, very first time experiencing something like this. And so it is mind-blowing. It's like 7 days in and it feels like, whoa, what is this massive thing that I'm experiencing for the first time?
Because when you know, you know.
Yeah.
When you find people who share a similar set of values with you, you know that it feels good. Yeah. And I think it's just amazing when we have this spread of nurses from literally every geographical part of the continental US and beyond, coming in from different cultures, different backgrounds, different specialties, different education inside of nursing, different length of experience, but we're all sharing this common core value, multiple core values of this desire to see and do something different inside of nursing, which is nurse coaching. And it's just so awesome to see that happen in real time and to see these connections begin to form. And as you said, Heather, I know that it is something that we live and breathe often, every single day, but it's not something that we take for granted. We're always talking about how it feels really good.
That's why we want to share it. We want to share it with everyone, with so many other nurses. And that reminds me, so somebody on the video conference that I had yesterday shared that part of what is feeling so good for her right now is that she's finally able to take a stand for the things that she believes in. And she's been trying to do more of that for the last couple of years. But this is the first time that she's surrounded by other people who she looks around and she's like, everyone here is taking a stand for something. They're taking a stand for their own wellness and finally prioritizing that. They're taking a stand for the future of their profession and creating a career that inspires them. They're taking a stand for nursing or for healthcare, or you fill in the blank. But this really empowering feeling of all of us together taking a stand for, as you said, these values that we have in common, but also the individual values, and we get to support each other on our own journey as well as the collective one.
Yes. The power of a collective. So I think as we start to talk about that, I think it's also important to like begin maybe with the opposite. So what's the opposite of feeling as though you're part of a community that supports you and uplifts you and holds similar values to you? The opposite of that is feeling lonely and feeling alone in your experience of maybe the other side of nursing. And I think that is where so many of these nurses were just 2 weeks ago. Just 2 weeks ago, they're inside of this land of, am I the only one that's thinking this? Am I the only one that's feeling this? And now, in just the flip of a switch, it's as though they're part of this completely different perception of what's possible as an experience inside of the profession. And I'm, by the way, so grateful to be reminded of that, but also to be able to hold space for that. Because I love that. That makes me feel so good and reminds me of like why I do this work. And it's because like I get to hold space for other people coming into this world and to being like, yeah, like yes, this is what I've been looking for decades, some of these nurses. And now they're here and it's just week 2.
And it's just getting started.
Just getting started.
That's right. So when I hear you talk about that feeling of being alone and that feeling of loneliness, I haven't felt that way in maybe years when it comes to nursing because of this collective that we have built and created for ourselves.
Because it's almost like we built the thing that we needed. Not
and
almost
why,
like
and why not build the thing that you most need?
We inadvertently built the thing that we needed and that we most wanted, which
created
was
the community we were craving.
A powerful collective to support us and that we could support as well. That's also a really good point, is that it's synergistic, you know. The more that you give and the more that you play full out, the more that you receive.
Yes. But the thing is that even though that's not the way that I feel presently, I can so quickly drop back into just really, really remembering how I felt, sadly, almost my entire career in bedside nursing. Like almost from the moment that I entered real life boots on the ground ICU nursing and was disheartened by what that actually was, I remember feeling alone and feeling isolated and feeling disconnected. And thank goodness I had my one most amazing work colleague who was like my best friend in my lifeboat, and we got through every single moment together. But that was a community of just the two of us, which is a community of two is powerful and more powerful than a community of one. But it's heartbreaking when I think back to how many years I spent in the nursing world feeling so disconnected. I mean, I know you had a different experience, and I think maybe working in the ER, you had I know, always more fun stories than I ever came home with.
We can come back to my experience in a moment, but I think it's worth elaborating on what yours was. Like, what did that look like for you? And was there a moment where you really awoke to that reality, or was it something that you were kind of just swimming in for a while, with it kind of just being your normal and not realizing that it was actually affecting you on different layers?
That's a good question, and I think both on some level, but I think I was aware of it every single day. And I think that's why the role felt so challenging for me and so unsustainable, is because the disconnect that I felt, the disconnect from the people, the disconnect from the role, and quite frankly, had I shown up more authentically, had I been willing to voice that I was feeling alone and voice that I was feeling disconnected, had I been brave enough to say, hey, there's something with this model that isn't fitting in my heart and I'm feeling out of alignment, if I had been willing to share that with more people, I'm sure, I now know that I would have found more nurses who I could connect with. But I didn't.
And maybe you could have even begun to like shift some of the culture.
Absolutely.
Taking a little bit more of a leadership role there as well.
But I didn't know how to do that yet. I think I learned all of that through becoming a nurse coach. I didn't know how to be authentic. I didn't know how to show up vulnerably. I didn't know how to have those deep conversations or really be brave enough to ask other people the tough questions and find out how they were feeling, because I was, as you said, swimming. I was just like swimming in this, and that feeling of loneliness and disconnect and not really being where I wanted to be or surrounded by who I wanted to be surrounded by ultimately led me to this moment of awakening, because it got to that point of like, okay, this isn't sustainable, right? I'm going to have to escape this box that I'm currently in order to start feeling differently, in order to start creating connections.
Maybe you felt as though you couldn't share what was coming up for you, with your colleagues, with your managers, with people at your work, because there is this undercurrent of needing to stay your lane very often inside of nursing. Like, yes, they're piling more and more on, but also we're just meant to take it. It's supposed to be part of the role as caregivers that we take it all on. Whatever they give to us, we take it on, and we try to do the absolute best that we can with the resources we have, because we want to do our best for our patients and for our communities. But it can be scary to express those things, because then we're afraid maybe we might risk our job, or we might risk our reputation, or we don't want to, rock the boat.
And I was new at something. I wanted to be a high performer. I wanted to be a good performer. I wanted everyone to think that I was, showing up every day, not only willing to do the work, but glad to do the work and happy to be there. And so
maybe also you're not sure if anybody else thinks what you think.
I was sure that nobody else thought what I thought.
And that's a really interesting sentiment that I would say a majority of nurses who come into the collective feel.
Right.
They're so surprised that so many others feel that similar sentiment to them. It's mind-blowing. They're like, oh, what? Where have you been my whole life? And I would be willing to venture a guess that they have been, nurses sharing a similar sentiment have been right next to you the whole time. Yes. But through nurse coaching, you're given a different voice. You're given a different level of confidence to be able to understand, like, okay, I'm not alone. I know other nurses feel the same way, and now I have the different tools to be able to bring this to my patients, to my practice, to my community, to my culture at my work, and to begin to affect a change in my day-to-day actions.
And I think that's kind of what I was alluding to with if I had been able to be more me, and if I had been able to ask people about more them, right? What are you really feeling? And is it similar to how I'm really feeling? That I would have found that I was surrounded by probably far more like-minded people than I knew at the time, or than I could feel at the time. But because I was entering a new world, and that came with all of my associated fears and desires to, be a people pleaser and have everyone think that I was doing good and doing the right thing, I didn't do that. And I find that that's very common when you enter into a new role or a new job or a new course. And when I reflect on why is this happening for these nurses in week 1 and week 2 of the program, it's because this course is set up so much differently, right? From the very first week, when we're inviting every single nurse to introduce themselves, we're inviting them to do it from a place of genuine authenticity, vulnerability.
With every reflection.
Introduce yourself, speak yourself into the collective in this true and raw way, so that we can see you, because we want to see you and we want to hear you, and then we want to be able to share with you and build that camaraderie and connection. I don't think you get that open and honest invitation for that type of entry into a new anything, role, course, field, almost anywhere. I mean, I certainly never experienced it outside of this realm.
Yeah, that's totally true. And we receive that feedback all the time. Of how it's not only you don't receive that layer of openness and safety in your roles, but also you have never received it inside of nursing education before, whether that be more traditional higher education or in continuing education programs. So I'm stoked that we provide that, because holy smokes, like, what a great thing to be able to provide. And to me, it just seems so clear and apparent that that's how education should be, especially for people who are experiencing what we experience as nurses. It just seems abundantly obvious to me that that should be the baseline layer of the cultures that we have in the workplace and how we set up education. We should have a safe environment to be able to express what we're feeling and how we can come together openly and honestly without there being repercussions. I'm stoked that we get to provide that. I hope that our model's catching on, but like I hope others begin to see like this is how it's done, y'all.
Yeah, well, and we know that it is beginning to spread because our nurse coaches are then taking what they are experiencing here, and that's what they're bringing back, right, to their hospitals, to their clinics, to their families, to their communities.
And we've seen how quickly those cultures can shift. Yeah, and I think that's what's really cool. You know, when you start bringing it back, like it's like the ripple effect happens pretty quickly.
So you alluded to a few of these things, right? Feeling really safe, really supported, but also feeling challenged to do better and be better. Let's talk about that, because I think you're honing in on some of these qualities that make a powerful collective, right? Because you can have a group of people and it's not necessarily powerful, right? It's certain qualities, certain defining characteristics, certain shared values that make a collective powerful. What would you say are some of the things about nurse coaches and the nurse coach collective that really makes this super unique?
So I think that for different areas of life, I know this to be true for myself, I surround myself with different people. So for my different interests and what I pursue, I surround myself with different types of people because like it's important to have different humans.
You are a multifaceted being,
we're all
you need people to
beings.
Bring those
Yes.
pieces out of you. Yeah.
And so inside of nursing, it's really important to surround yourself with the type of people who you want to become or who are gonna lift you up. For me, my experience inside of nursing, I think was different than maybe yours was in that, and maybe it's because I had been inside of healthcare for so long before actually becoming a registered nurse. I had done transport, volunteer inside the hospital all through high school. I was always the fly on the wall. I was the guy who would take the tubes and wrap them in rubber bands and then just make hundreds and hundreds of those that the nurses could just grab what they need. And so I was always exposed to this stuff. So I really knew the reality.
You knew what you were getting into.
I kind of knew what I was getting into. And so there was no real big surprise to me when I entered in from school to being a nurse on the floor. I wasn't like, whoa, this is completely different. I wasn't expecting this at all because I just got it. Like I knew what I was getting. I knew what I had signed up for. And so I think that was a real benefit to me because that allowed me to focus on the goodness in my relationships with my colleagues. We had, there's a lot of gallows humor that happens inside of nursing, and that was how we coped. And I really had a lot of fun up to a certain point. Up to a point where, in working in the CVICU, when I discovered, mind blown, 6-7 years into nursing, that holy smokes, wait, chronic disease can be prevented, treated, and reversed. Like you just don't think about those things when you're younger and you're just having fun in the ER. Yeah, so when I discovered that, like that's when my heart began to shift. And so that's when I began to experience that perceived loneliness. I still had great connections with people at work and I still had a lot of friends there. But I began to feel like I was the only one seeing this reality. And whether or not that was true, I was the only one that was like expressing it. And nobody else was really on board with me in that way. Luckily, I found nurse coaching pretty quickly as soon as I began to experience that sentiment because I'm kind of one of those people who, when something's wrong with me, I throw the kitchen sink at it.
That's true. I've seen that many times.
If I got like
very accurate.
If I got pain or like back pain or something, like I will go see a chiropractor, an acupuncturist, massage. I'll hire a personal trainer because like I don't want to live in that any longer than I need to. And so I usually surround myself with people who are gonna get me out of that experience as quickly as possible, so I can go back to like having a great experience of life in as much as I possibly can.
Yes, I feel like we need a ding life lesson from Peter. When something isn't working well, go after it ferociously from every single angle and be proactive, right? Be proactive because try everything, why not?
Try everything, why not? And so I was really benefited from finding nurse coaching quickly when I started entering into that state of feeling lonely. And so I only experienced that for maybe 6 to 12 months on a deeper level before I found nurse coaching. And then it was like, yes, like I found the people who are going to help me enter into the next phase of my nursing career. And, ever since finding them, of course, I've had the ups and the downs and the waves, which I think is normal inside of anything. But man, nurse coaching has lifted me up in such a beautiful way because I've found like-minded individuals, people who share a similar set of values to me, to be able to help me be the fullest expression of what it means to be a nurse and a healer.
That like-minded group of people who share values and are going to lift you up and inspire you to keep moving in that desired direction. There's like two sides of that, right? There's this super supportive aspect of that where you know that you're around like-minded people, you know that you get to feel very safe and supported. On the other side of it, in order for a community to lift you up, often it needs to be more than just support, right? More than just cheerleading, more than just like-minding, and more of what like-minding. I like that as a verb.
I like that, actually.
More of just like thinking the way you think. It's also a willingness to challenge, right? And to call you on your BS when you need to be called out, and a willingness to put in an intentional effort to help you grow and be better. For me, that seems like one of the most unique things about this collective, is because it has both of those worlds.
We know some of the underlying factors and some of the overarching themes, but I think it's also important for each nurse and nurse coach to define that for yourself. And maybe it's worth posing some questions. This changes. The type of people that you surround yourself with within nursing and nurse coaching changes as you evolve and grow. But I guess to my nurses, my nurse coaches, if you could close your eyes for a second and really think about who is it that you want to surround yourself with in this moment in time? What are the qualities of the people that are going to lift you up and help you enter into the next phase of what it means to be a more fully expressed healer and a more authentic healer?
Well, I was harping on this idea that it does change, it does evolve. And part of that is like we're on this constant evolution of self, so that the people that got you here may not be the people who got you there unless they are growing right alongside you. And that's one of the coolest things about this community, is like we are all growing together here inside of this collective.
Deep personal and professional continuous evolution.
But I think the final important question, and sorry for those of you who still have your eyes closed and have been here in this moment for quite some time, I'm back, is what would that change for you to be surrounded by those people? Once you can identify who they are and how that would make you feel and what kind of defines that ideal, most powerful collective, what would that change for you? How would that inspire you? How would that motivate you? What would be different in your life if you had that, not as your one-off experience of one group call or, one class that you get to attend, but to have a core collective that feels truly like your people, your most powerful collective, to have that consistently and constantly?
Great questions.
Because I will say I didn't know the answer to that until I felt it. I could ideate, I could envision.
And what did it feel like? How did you know?
It felt like it made me want to cry. Like it just made me want to, I felt so openly emotional and raw and vulnerable and seen and heard and welcome and whole in a way that I didn't know there were pieces of me that were missing. Because I had been grasping at this feeling of loneliness and disconnect and trying to fill all of these pieces and these voids by myself, but I couldn't. And then finally finding people and realizing, oh, of course, humans are not meant to navigate life, and nurses are not meant to navigate nursing alone. And so it was having these people that started to fill in these pieces, and it was this wholeness and this homeness. That's
feeling home.
That's the best way I can describe it.
That's a really good way to describe it. I think a distinction that we didn't make was between being alone and the perception of loneliness. Yeah. I'm sure everybody's felt the sensation of feeling alone in a crowded room. That's a statement that we say in society because every one of us has experienced it at some level or another, at some point or another. And being alone is the physical component of being alone. And we all need to be alone sometimes. We all need space. We need to go to the woods. We need to go for a walk by ourselves to be able to go inward and to just be alone with our thoughts. And that's a very natural, normal part of the human experience. And then there's also the other side of it, which is the perception of loneliness. And this has risen to epidemic levels in society. It's a super huge mental health issue right now. So much so that in many countries around the world, they're like hiring ministers of loneliness to facilitate deeper connections and to like focus on this because it's a deep societal issue. So it's not specifically like just a nursing issue, but rather it's, the issue of feeling alone and feeling lonely inside of nursing is part of a greater societal issue that has trickled into nursing because it's, nursing's part of society. Nursing's part of culture. And if culture as a whole is feeling a greater sensation of loneliness, then of course it's going to trickle into nursing. And if it's anything like everything else, we discussed previously how nurses are more unhealthy and more unhealthy than the average person, have higher rates of mental health issues, then it's no wonder that we're also experiencing very high rates of loneliness inside the profession. And so I think we present all of these questions of what does a great community look like to you? Who do you need to surround yourself with the ultimate invitation being, check out the Nurse Coach Collective. At the beginning of the episode, we talked about how we built this because we needed it.
We needed it.
And we wanted it, inadvertently, right? We wanted to build a kick-ass continuing education program to help nurses become board certified nurse coaches. But also we wanted to build a community and we wanted to build a collective. And so maybe now's a good time to talk about some of the various ways in which that shows up inside of our world for other nurses.
What you just shared brings up for me is a really, really, really important reminder that because of that difference of truly being alone physically versus that perceived loneliness that is so pervasive in our society and in our profession, the reminder that I want every single human and every single nurse to have, which is that if you are feeling alone in this moment, if you have ever felt alone, if you feel alone in the future, you are not alone. You're not alone because there are so many other nurses who are feeling what you're feeling, who are thinking what you're thinking. And it's time that we come together as a collective and we start talking about it and we start empowering each other and inspiring each other and lifting one another up and challenging each other to go deeper so that we can have this like collective evolution of self, collective growth in consciousness and health and well-being and fun and enjoyment of life and all of the things.
And the antidote to it, to loneliness, is so simple.
Yeah.
It's authentic connections. It's facilitating openness and being able to be who you are and to speak what you feel and what's on your heart within the context of a safe environment. It's so simple, but holy smokes, is it transformative? And I think we're bearing witness to that this week on the video calls, with the future nurse coaches. And it always reminds me of how powerful that is. And so that's really why it's a core component of lifestyle medicine, something that I can't wait to talk about on future episodes. But connection and building relationships is vital to our well-being as humans. And it's vital to us showing up to our fullest potential as healers.
Yeah. So going back to your question, what can you do and what can we offer in this moment in terms of being a part of the collective and having access to that community? I think, of course, what we keep talking about over and over again in these video calls and all of this stuff, we're talking about the Nurse Coach Collective, the nurse coaching program that any nurse can be a part of who wants to become a board certified nurse coach. We build community. We weave community into every fiber of how that course is structured and set up, from the online interactions, the support you get from your nurse coach instructors and mentors, the video conferences, the in-person events and conferences that we host and will be very excited to talk about in the future when we got more on that. And that's this amazing thing that nurses who choose to be a part of the course and who want to become nurse coaches get to have, is that collective built in.
And a quick distinction, community is a bit of an overused word in a lot of ways, and not simply a community. It's like a deep connection. And I think that's an important distinction to make. Yes, the community is there, but it's deeper. and the connections are really, really interpersonal and dynamic and authentic. And I think that's because you can still be surrounded by a lot of people, but still feel isolated and lonely. So
I think I'm trying to avoid saying collective over and over
So I'm
again
going to throw in connection,
because I don't want to
connection.
be redundant. But you're right, and then I intersperse community, but they both carry a very different weight for me when I say them as well. So I appreciate that you point that out.
So if you are not part of the collective yet,
Yes.
check out the Facebook group. There are over 10,000, and it's I actually have created my feed to only show, maybe this is putting me into a bubble on Facebook, but Facebook can be a bit of a cesspool, and so I avoid most of it as much as possible. But my feed is pretty much curated to see mostly what's going on inside of our groups, and it's mind-blowing. Like every time I'm in there, I'm like, there's no other group that is this active, that's this uplifting, that's this inspiring. It's amazing, y'all. And so to my nurses inside of that group, thank you for making that space what it is, because it's really uplifting in the potential for the realm of social media to be this place that's not so good. It's the polar freaking opposite. So kudos to the team at the Nurse Coach Collective for creating that culture, but more importantly, so much gratitude for every single nurse who's in there posting inspiring, uplifting things, because we become what we see. So invitation number one, definitely go and be a part of that community. And don't forget that you get what you give, and be active in there. Yes, you can be a wallflower if you want to. I'm guilty of being a wallflower on social media the majority of the time, but with the exception of what I do here, obviously.
You get what you give. You get out what you put in.
So
but
playful
also
out in there.
But also take what you need, right? If you need to be a silent, passive observer for a while to find out, are these my people? Am I vibing with what's going on in here? You do you. Your invitation is an open one. So search in the Facebook world for the Nurse Coach Collective. It's a completely free group. If you are interested in anything that we're sharing about today, then come join us and you are welcome there. And the other place is, obviously you have made it here already, but this podcast. I mean, half of the reason why we are so passionate about putting these episodes together is to give you the chance to hang out with Peter and me and find out, are we your people, right? Did the stuff that we're talking about resonate with you? And you can listen to us on your favorite place to tune into your podcasts. You can also watch all of these episodes on YouTube. This is a good one if you want to see what it looks like when Peter and Heather get tears in our eyes and a little bit emotional. I think these videos are going to be very, very nice demonstrations of that.
And so those are like places to be able to connect. And then there is the obvious next step, which is the free application call. This is something we have provided to, at this point, close to it's thousands. It's well above 5,000 nurses that we've spoken to. And what I love so much about that is it's like the vibe we were talking about when we're on the video calls these weeks, and the nurses' minds are blown about like, wow, like this isn't a possibility for me to feel this level of connection inside of my profession. That is the gateway, to really beginning to feel that deep sense of connection, because you get to talk to a real life practicing nurse coach, somebody who practices that connection within the context of a powerful collective every single day. They're in that world. And so if you have been thinking about that, if that's not something you've done, then please do that, because it will just fill your heart with this layer of like, man, I'm so grateful like that I get to connect with this person. And connection's the antidote to loneliness. So if you're feeling lonely, if you're feeling isolated, if you're feeling crazy inside of nursing, then connect with us through that free call.
Yes, you have the full nurse coaching course if that's something that you're interested in joining us for. You also have the free Nurse Coach Collective Facebook community. You've got the podcast episodes that you can listen to. You've got the YouTube channel that you can tune into if you prefer to watch videos. You have the free application call where you can chat with somebody on our team. I got one more thing. What are you laughing at?
It's crazy. That's a lot of stuff. That's like a lot of stuff that we manage just for gratis, yo. I mean, talk about flooding you with value and with like insight and with the opportunity for connection.
That's because of the experiences that we have had, and it takes
so glad that
having
we do all
multiple different avenues to and multiple different instances of reaching out and trying to forge those connections, I think, to really have the door open or to really find the thing or the person that resonates. So yeah, we do. We try to
finally feel like we're not just some internet thing going on, right?
Yes, real people, real nurses, ready and waiting to welcome you in.
What was the final piece that you're going to say?
The final piece there is, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, if you have ever felt alone, if you have ever felt disconnected, if you have ever felt curious about what this is all about, and you are feeling even a hint of a drive to reach out and connect, right? It's such a tiny step. We are always an email away, info@thenursecoaches.com. You can send us an email to say hi. You can send us an email to share with us what you're feeling. You can ask your questions, and we would always love to hear from you.
And that's for nurses not in the world yet, who are not board certified nurse coaches. But for our nurse coaches, we have so many opportunities for y'all to continue to connect with each other, whether you are within the course currently, the program to become a nurse coach, or if you've graduated. Like, the other invitation is to continue to show up.
Yes.
To continue to reach out and to not let yourself fall prey to the most common thing, which is to, slow down and to remove yourself and to begin to feel that sentiment of perceived isolation coming back. Because all you have to do is to reach out to your peer coaches, reach out to us, reach out to make a post inside of, the closed Transformative Nurse Coach groups, and stay connected with our community, because I think that's really, really vital. Because as I said, we evolve, we change. The nurse that you are now is different than when you started the program and before you became a nurse coach. And the nurse coach who you are today is different than the one that you're striving to be. So make sure that you are continuously putting yourself in a position where you can connect more deeply with other nurses who are going to lift you up to that next level.
And that's what makes this collective that much more special, is that it's not like something that you enter into when you sign up for the course and you graduate and then it's over. This is like, these are your people from here on out. When we say lifelong, we mean lifelong. And we have gotten to see this play out for the last 5-6 years of our graduates continuing to maintain these incredible friendships and these incredible relationships and help each other grow onward and upwards to places that we are still only beginning to explore what's possible for all of us.
Together, we transform healthcare, one nurse, one patient, one conversation at a time.
You got it. All right. And before we close out, speaking of reaching out to us with emails, I have one email that Peter and I received from a nurse coach, soon to be nurse coach, who is beginning their journey this week. And I simply need to share it with all of you because it's pretty awesome. Hey, Heather and Peter, I am just getting started in the course and I'm already blown away by how powerful the first few weeks of learning are. I can tell I'm going to grow so much, both personally and professionally. I wanted to reach out to say, well, thank you. I've been a nurse for over 21 years, and I'm only now realizing just how alone I've felt all of these years. I've always believed there was a better way to practice nursing. I just had no idea how or where to find it. For over a decade in this field, I've felt pretty isolated. But now, only 2 weeks into the course, I can say that the most amazing insight I'm having is plain and simple. I am not alone. I feel like I have finally found my people in the great big world of nursing. It's hard to put into words, and I can barely express my gratitude, but I feel like I am finally home. That is the power of a collective. Welcome home.